Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going deep on cattle. I think most people think they know cows, but there's a whole lot more to them.
Oh, yeah. Definitely a lot more than meets the eye.
I've been going through the research, and to be honest, I'm already finding some pretty surprising stuff. And luckily, we have expert speaker here who, well, let's just say they know their cattle.
I've spent a fair bit of time with these creatures, that's for sure.
So maybe a good place to start is with the word cattle itself. I was looking into it, and the origin is, well, not what I expected.
Yeah, it's a bit of a curveball. You'd think it would be connected to, like old farming words or animal sounds, but it actually goes back to Anglo-Norman and medieval Latin, and back then it meant capital or personal property.
Huh. So right off the bat, we're seeing their economic importance.
Exactly. It's like their value is built right into their name.
I guess you could say they were like a walking, mooing investment.
Huh, love that. And that economic importance goes back a long way. We're talking thousands of years, all the way back to when they were first domesticated.
Right, and I was reading about that. It's fascinating that humans figured out how to domesticate cattle in different parts of the world totally independently.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable. So about 10,500 years ago, we see this happening in a couple of places. First, there's central Anatolia and the areas around there. People were domesticating the ancestors of what we now call taurine cattle. Those are the breeds that you mostly see in Europe and a bunch of other places.
Okay, and the other spot.
Well, around the same time, but way over in the Indian subcontinent, you have folks domesticating zebu cattle. Those are the ones with that big hump on their back. They do really well in hotter climates.
So two different lineages developing totally separately. It makes you wonder, how did they even figure out how to domesticate these big animals in the first place?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I mean, we can only guess at the specifics. But it was probably a gradual thing. Maybe they started by managing wild herds, capturing young ones, and then over generations they'd select for certain traits, like being docile or producing a lot of milk. And slowly but surely, they shaped them into the domesticated cattle we know today.
Wow, so it was like a really long process of humans and cattle evolving together.
Yeah, a real partnership, you could say.
And that domestication led to some pretty amazing adaptations in cattle, like their digestive systems. Those are incredible.
Oh, absolutely. Cattle are ruminants, which basically means they have a four-compartment stomach. It's built to break down tough plant material like grass. It's super complex and really efficient.
Yeah, that four-compartment stomach has always fascinated me. Can you give me a quick breakdown on how that works?
Okay, so it all starts with the rumen. That's the first chamber. Think of it like a giant fermentation tank. It's full of billions of microorganisms, bacteria, fungi, protozoa, all that good stuff. And those microbes produce enzymes. They break down cellulose, which is the main part of plant cell walls.
So the microbes are basically doing the pre-digesting for the cow.
You got it. And then, get this, the cow regurgitates that pre-digested food, chews it some more, that's what we call chewing the cud, and then swallows it again. That helps break down the plant material even more.
Okay, and then where does it go?
After the rumen, it goes to the reticulum, then the omasum, and finally the abomasum. That last one, the abomasum, is similar to our stomach. That's where the final stages of digestion happen.
Wow, so it's like a whole assembly line in there.
Pretty much. It's amazing how evolution figured out such a specialized system.
Yeah, it lets them live on a diet we humans could never handle.
That's for sure. It's one of the reasons they've become such an important food source for us.
Which actually brings me to my next question. So we've talked about, how important they are economically, and how they were domesticated in that crazy digestive system of theirs. But honestly, what I'm really curious about is their behavior. I mean, we tend to think of cows as these, kind of gentle giants just grazing in fields. But is there more to them than that?
Oh, there's definitely a lot more going on in those bovine brains than people realize. They're actually quite intelligent. They can learn, remember things, and even have different personality traits.
Wait, personality traits,
Yeah.
cows.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You'll have some that are more curious, more outgoing, and others that are more shy and reserved. They can even form strong social bonds with each other.
So it's not just a herd, it's like a whole cow society.
That's a good way to put it.
What are some other examples of their intelligence that would surprise people?
Well, for one, studies have shown that cattle can remember where food and water are. They can remember locations for weeks, even months. And they can also recognize individual humans. They can even tell the difference between faces they know and faces they don't.
Hold on, cows can recognize faces. That's wild. I always thought they were just sort of staring off into space.
Uh-huh. Yeah, they get a bad rap for that. But they're much more aware of what's going on around them than people think. They can even learn simple tasks, solve problems.
They're not just big, dumb animals.
Not even close. They've got a specific kind of intelligence, one that's perfect for their lifestyle as grazing herd animals.
I'm definitely starting to see them differently now. I do want to touch on something that's a bit of a sensitive topic. We can't really talk about cattle without talking about the environmental impact of cattle farming.
Yeah, you're right. It's a big issue. Cattle farming, especially the intensive kind that's common in a lot of places, it does have a pretty significant environmental footprint. The main concern is greenhouse gas emissions, mainly methane, which is produced by their digestion and their manure.
I've heard that cattle are responsible for a big chunk of global greenhouse gas emissions.
It's true. According to the FAO, cattle contribute about 7% of global greenhouse gas emissions. It's definitely something we need to address if we're serious about climate change.
So what can we do about it? Are there ways to make cattle farming more sustainable?
There are actually a lot of promising solutions being explored. Some researchers are looking into ways to reduce methane emissions through changes in diet, like adding seaweed to their feed. Others are focusing on better manure management practices to capture and use the methane as a source of energy.
Sounds like we need a multi-pronged approach. And what about the ethical side of things? There's been a lot of talk about the welfare of cattle in industrial farming systems.
Yeah, that's another crucial aspect we need to think about. Intensive farming practices, like keeping them in crowded feedlots. That can lead to a lot of stress for the animals, and disease, and just a lower quality of life overall.
Are there alternatives to these intensive systems?
Absolutely. A lot of farmers are moving towards more sustainable and humane practices, like pasture-based systems that lets the cattle graze freely and express their natural behaviors. And there's also growing interest in alternative protein sources, like plant-based meat, which could mean we rely less on animal agriculture in general.
So it sounds like there's a lot of innovation happening in the world of cattle farming. It gives me hope that we can find ways to produce food that are sustainable and ethical.
I agree, it's a complex challenge, but I'm optimistic that we can find solutions that work for everyone, people and animals included.
Well, this has been so fascinating. I feel like I've learned a ton about cattle, and I have to say, I'm even more impressed by them now.
Yeah, I never realized there was so much to cattle. It's like they're full of surprises. They really are, and their story is so intertwined with us, with human history and culture.
That's what I was thinking about, like how cows are practically sacred in some cultures.
You're thinking of Hinduism, right? Where the cow is like this symbol of life, motherhood, nonviolence. In lots of parts of India, cows are protected by law. They just wander around freely, even in cities.
Wow, it's amazing how deeply they're connected to some societies.
It shows you how much they've shaped human civilization, not just as food or materials, but as a symbol.
Oh, and don't forget all the expressions we use that are inspired by cattle. Like, till the cows come home, holy cow, bull in a china shop. They're even part of our language.
It's true. Everywhere you look in human history, there's some trace of cattle.
It just shows you how important they've always been to us. So looking ahead, what do you think the future holds for cattle? With all the challenges we're facing, climate change, the need for more food, how will their role change?
That's the big question, isn't it? I think it all comes down to finding that balance between using their resources and making sure they're treated well. We need to keep pushing for more sustainable farming, figure out how to reduce those greenhouse gas emissions, and really prioritize animal welfare.
So basically, the future of cattle depends on us, on our ability to innovate and adapt.
Exactly. We need to rethink how we raise them, how we interact with them. Maybe we'll see a shift toward smaller farms, more local, focused on quality over quantity. Or maybe we'll develop new tech that helps us reduce the environmental impact of cattle farming.
It's exciting to think about all the possibilities.
It is, and I'm optimistic. I think we can find solutions that work for both humans and cattle. After all, we've been living side by side for thousands of years. Our fates are kind of tied together.
Well, expert speaker, this has been a truly eye-opening deep dive. I feel like I've gained a whole new understanding of cattle, and I definitely won't be looking at them the same way again.
Glad to hear it. It's been great chatting with you.
And to our listeners, thanks for joining us on this exploration of the world of cattle. We hope you've learned something new, maybe even shifted your perspective a bit. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.